Let's see what's happening in the dump now. I feel like things are hurrying rapidly towards some fantastic conclusion. No, he said again, it couldn't be those two. But on the other hand, who else would drop out of the sky like that? He frowned and looked across the rubbish mountains to the setting sun. He was still several piles away when the first kingfisher, then the bittern, landed, stirring up a little cloud of ash around the debris of the mouse and his child. We're too late, said the seal, after the frog had hastily introduced himself and the bittern. I'm afraid this is the end of them. The frog said nothing, but quickly gathered up the clockwork and parts of the broken tin bodies, and put them into the kingfisher's string bag. Then both birds took off with their passengers and flew to the edge of the dump, where they perched on an oak tree near the railroad tracks and considered what to do next. Now I have assisted you with your warps and woofs, said the bittern to the frog. I really must return to my usual mode of life. Goodbye. Goodbye, said Frog. On behalf of my friends and myself, let me offer our heartfelt thanks for your prompt and generous response to my appeal for help. But the bittern, his farewells completed, stayed where he was, looking at the broken father and son. I hope he got all the pieces, said Frog. He took the arms and legs of the two halves of the mouse and his child and fitted them together, bending the little tin flaps back into place along the edges of the bodies, so that the child would not immediately fall apart. As his two halves came together, the mouse child returned to himself. He heard all at once the rustle of leaves around him, and saw reflecting the light of the setting sun, the golden eyes of his old friend fixed anxiously upon him. Uncle Frog, he said, I saw you following the hawk. I knew you'd find us before Manny Rat did. Frog set him down carefully on the branch and picked up the father. The mouse child had not yet seen the others around him, standing alone and a little giddy without his father's hand supporting him. He was looking straight ahead out there through the opening in the leaves. Ours, he suddenly said fiercely. Our territory. What's he talking about, said the kingfisher. Then he peered out through the leaves and saw what the child saw. Between the trees and the railroad tracks stood a little cottage long abandoned. Its paint had flaked away, and the empty windows stared out blindly at the tracks, and tall weeds choked the doorway. Beside the cottage was a pole with a wooden platform at the top. A large birdhouse had once stood there for the purple martins to nest in, but it was gone now. Stark against the red sky, its mansard roof crudely mended with tin, and all its chimneys and dormers jammed roughly back into place, was the dollhouse that had been on the counter of the store years ago. The windows had not a pane of glass among them. Thick pieces of wood fastened askew replaced the ornate mouldings, the graceful balusters of brackets and porches and balconies. The scrollwork and the carven cornices were gone, and the whole house bristled with bent nails clumsily driven and smashed into the splintered wood. Nothing was straight and everything awry. Newly fitted to the roof in place of the lost lookout was a crooked watchtower. The hinged front that had once swung open to reveal the interior was nailed shut, and a heavy coat of black paint covered all. Second-hand crepe paper bunting, the red, white, and blue, which had run together in rain and damp, festooned the balconies, and little flags drooped from the chimneys and the towers. A clothesline fastened to a branch above the roof showed how the house had been raised. A partly filled sherry bottle hanging from the boom of the erector-set crane hinted at the party. And pacing on the watchtower, in a new silk dressing gown, was Manny Rat. Silhouetted against the sunset, the present master of the dump gazed at the distant trash fires and hummed a little tune, while thought, with pleasurable anticipation, of the housewarming he planned for that evening. On his return to the dump after his long absence, he had quickly seen the house's possibilities as a private residence, and he preempted it. The ambitious rat had expanded his operations with the fullness of time, had become a considerably more important personage than before. He now commanded squads of rats as well as wind-ups. He had begun to think of the dignity of his position. The trash piles were constantly changing. The television set, where he had lived, no longer commanded any view whatever. Manny Rat resolved on a dwelling appropriate to his rank, and a location a little removed from the hurly-burly where he might relax after the cares of the nest, while yet keeping an eye upon his business interests. Accordingly, he evicted the social and athletic club, then resident, and devoted his ingenuity to the relocation and restoration of his new property. Press gangs of smaller, weaker rats had toiled to raise up and repair the house. The wind-ups of the Ford squad had trudged heavy-laden for miles with the materials for its renovation, and the elephant had been harnessed to the crane and the windlass so she might help put in good order for her master the house she had once called her own. She stood beside it now, bereft of any plush, her bare tin weather-stained and rusty, her clockwork all but worn out in the service of Manny Rat. Through a glassless window her one eye saw the room in which a lady and gentlemen and dolls had sat at their tea, where now a garbage buffet set out upon the floor awaited the delectation of the invited rats. Rat servants scuttled up and down stairs, making all ready for the evening, while rat guards, armed with spears, walked the platform, favouring the elephant with low humour and coarse remarks as they made their rounds. The father was hastily put together as the son had been, and speechless with relief he looked into the face of the frog, and then he saw the elephant in the dollhouse. "Oh!" he said, and "oh!" again, and wept. Then he felt a great rage growing in him, and he said the same words that the child had spoken. "Ours." "Look, Papa," said the child, as the frog moved the tin seal to where the father and son could see her. "The elephant, the seal, the house. It wasn't impossible. We found them all." "And the enemy who awaits us at the end," said the father, watching Manny Rat upon his black tower. He was silent for a while. Through the gathering dusk he looked at the forlorn elephant standing by the dollhouse. The road had been long and hard indeed, but now he knew that he had found what he wanted to find at the end of it. "Now we must fight for our territory," he said. "I don't understand," said the seal. "Kingfishers have territories, and I know that animals do, but toys don't." "We aren't toys anymore," said the father. "Toys are to be played with, and we aren't. We have endured all that Frog foretold, the painful spring, the shattering fall, the moor. Now we have come to the place where the scattering is regathered." "What do you mean?" said the seal. "Be my daughter," said the father. "Be my sister," said the child. "Will you, so we can have a family?" The tin seal, her hooks and draggled feathers drooping about her head, sat on the branch and looked into the darkening sky. Her past life came back to her all in a rush. The store, the house she had gone to, and the children who had broken her, the dump and Manny Rat, her travels with the cause of art, and the rabbit's flea circus, the quiet days with Muskrat, and her daily work with the kingfisher. On the whole, it had not been a bad life, and it had seemed a long and weary time that she had been alone of her kind in the wild world. She hesitated no longer. "Yes," she said, "I will." "Well," said the bittern, "it simply is not possible to put off any longer my return to the marsh. I must seek solitude again." But still he watched and listened curiously and made no move to go. "Oh, I think there's going to be the birds." "Have you asked any plans for the winning this territory claim?" Frog asked the mouseless child. "Not yet," said the father. "I made the hawk drop us here when I saw you following us," said the child to the frog, "but I never expected that we'd find the dollhouse and have to fight Manny Rat so soon." "As well as 7 or 8 other rats that I counted in around that house," said the bittern, dropping all pretense of leaving and throwing himself wholeheartedly into the conversation. "And all the guards, as you may have noticed, are armed." "Still," said Kingfisher, "someone with a sharp beak, flying fast and striking accurately, might have a sporting chance." "Doubtful," said Frog, "very doubtful." "There's Manny Rat all alone on the tower," said the Kingfisher, "and without a spear. What if I got through the guards and finished him off right now?" "Then all the other rats would move up on one," said Frog. "There would be a new Manny Rat to finish off." "You're absolutely right," said the father. "It isn't simply a matter of killing one rat or winning one battle. The battle must be won in such a way as to inflict upon the enemy a defeat so crushing that every rat in the dump will live in abject terror of us, and leave us undisputed masters of that house. Only in that way can we keep our territory once we take it." "And relying as we must upon the elephant of surprise," said Frog. "Did I say the elephant of surprise?" "I said the elephant of surprise. Relying upon the element of surprise, we cannot afford a single wrong move from the very first moment we show our hand." "Exactly," said the father. "The elephant of surprise." "Element," he corrected himself. "Oh, that's fantastic." The frog looked out through the leaves into the twilight. 30 feet away on the dollhouse platform, the rat guards walked their post in a sloppy and unmilitary fashion, but seemed quite alert. "I find myself wondering about those spears," he said. As if in answer to his question, one of the guards idly took aim at a swallow that skimmed low over the dollhouse in the dusk. The bird was an easy target, but the rat's marksmanship was poor. The spear barely penetrated a winged covert before it was shaken loose. The guard watched complacently as the scarcely wounded swallow flew up sharply, fluttered brokenly a moment, and then dropped like a stone. The guards took another spear from the rack and resumed his rounds. "Poison," said the frog, "just as I feared. Friendly Rat has learned something from the shrews." "What do we do now?" said the Kingfisher. "Wait," said the father. "For what exactly?" asked the bittern. "I don't know," the father said, "but I'll know when I see it. Something will happen. Some sign will indicate the X for us. My son and I have a long time waiting. We can wait a little longer now that victory is close." His eyes were fixed on the elephant as he spoke, and there was new energy in his voice. "How can you be so sure of winning?" asked the seal. "We already have done our losing," said the father. "Our defeats are all behind us." All right, Christy, and we'll continue this in a little bit. We're still alternating, but we're getting very close to finishing. Very close. So in the meantime, I'm going to consider listening to Lost in the Light. And, oh! Christy messaged you. My goodness. Are you there? Do you want to Skype for a bit? Absolutely. Alright, Christy. I'm gonna get going. I have to Skype you for a bit. I love you dearly. Sleep well. Keep calm. Yes, I do. Find Lama Carrie-Ann, and I'll be home so soon. I love you, Christy. Good night. To the Skype!